Welcome back. I am your host of Mix and Matchbox, Brent Feldman. Today joining us is Raul Hernandez Ochoa, founder of Do Good Work. Hey, Raul, how are you doing? Welcome.
Brent, good morning. Excited to be here.
Definitely. Absolutely. Excited to have you. Actually, you know what? I know that we're going to jump quite quickly into these questions and stuff. The first one I actually have for you here is, how did you come to create Do Good Work after spending time at agencies? And the two-part question, but it may seem obvious, but why the name?
It's interesting. I was reflecting on when I ever picked up that name and reviewing. It was like a slogan that I used to say all the time, even before I ever started the business. And it's like it's more of an essence of how you do what you do, um, and like a three-part approach to it. It's not like you're just doing the work and you're doing excellent, but it's also in the struggles behind the scenes that no one's ever going to see. Like those are your own and no one's ever going to see them. Like, how do you show up to those? And I think there's a choice that we have, or even like, I know you're in the agency world and you're working with clients, and like the client's not going to see behind the scenes. They're not going to know if you cut a corner, if you take a shortcut or whatever. Like it's that choice. It's that binary choice. And I think those little small incremental tiny little choices equal to the output of your future or how you're going to decide to show up in the world. So that's kind of like the essence of Do Good Work. It's like the beauty behind the struggle. It's making the right choices at difficult times, and it's not always easy. You may not always make the right choices, but at least we strive to do that. I came to Mix a company, I believe in 2018, and that was after a series of help running my own freelance, turned into a little mini agency, turned into helping other agencies grow. And a mentor at the time when I was helping a digital marketing agency in the direct response space. We almost tripled in a year from like 7 people to 21. And my mentor at the time was like, "You should write a book." I'm like, "What do you mean I should write a book? Well, what are you talking about? Like, just write it down." Like, write what down? Like, just write the principles down. So I wrote the principles down, and it's nothing too fancy, but it's more about some of the observations and the key things that I implemented and that were necessary to propel outside of the obvious, like you need sales, you need a team, et cetera. But like, how do you go about that? And that's what became what we're doing today with Do Good Work.
That's awesome. That is really cool. It seems like, and I've seen through obviously your website and other things, that you speak with a lot of business owners about their company, and it seems like a path, for revenue generation, and maybe even pseudo therapy for, the people that you're speaking with, because obviously, as you just mentioned and Do Good Work, there's struggles behind the scenes. There's lots of things going on, but what would you say are the most common reasons that, maybe people feel like they are trapped within their business?
I think it's interesting that you mentioned pseudotherapy. I thought that's pretty funny. That's an interest just to be like reflecting in real time here with you. Like clients love to talk to me, and it's obviously that's not scalable, but that's one thing to think about. Like why is that? And I dug into that. A few things around what's blocking them from actually growing. So taking a step back, we're both in marketing. I see 3 tenses: past, present, future. And in each, our mind is stuck. And we need to identify where we stuck. Are we stuck in the past? Are we self-doubting? Is this negative self-view? Is this judgment from others? Do we have low self-worth? Or are we stuck in the present? Are we unsure what we're going to be doing? Are we afraid of taking action? Or do we not know if this is the right thing or the wrong thing to do? And that's usually where my work shines, because it's like, here's like the right stuff to have clarity and take action and grow, designed for you. But then also you might be stuck in the future. You're fearful of the future. You may not have hope, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I don't really focus too much on the future, but some clients, sometimes we need to figure out what's stopping them from the past. Hey, you have to increase your prices. The rebuttal: am I worth that price? And the issue sometimes is with business owners is that we self-identify with the work that we're doing. So sometimes we got to get over that hump before we can change your pricing, change your business model structure. So somewhat pseudotherapy, but I think it's also lack of clarity. Like there's so many things to do, like the old saying, like you can't read the label from within the bottle. So many things to do, so many different options of what to take. And the answer is like, well, how are we going to actually reach this growth goal for me. And growth doesn't always mean more revenue. It could be more clients, more time. It could be same revenue, getting you out of the business. There's different terminologies to define growth, but it's all based on the founder and the business owner. But we also need to figure out, where are they on those tenses and what's truly blocking them? Do they know who they are and they're fully propelled as a human being, don't have self image view issues, and they just need to be figuring out, what are the right things that I need to have my team execute on? Or do we need to work on a few things that's blocking us to take the right actions today?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm sure that discovery process has to be exciting. I mean, obviously, it's different every time, but not only are you digging into, the business, you're digging into the person, and trying to uncover those things that is going to help not only themselves grow, but their business grow. But that's got to be fascinating.
Yeah, we always forget that businesses, we think it's a machine or like this other entity, but like it's driven by humans. Like,
Yeah.
Can't forget the human element.
Totally. Absolutely. In some of the materials, I guess that you mentioned, working for digital founders. And I assume that there's, kind of like a through line with some of the advice that you give. Do you think that your work is more cut out for the people in the digital space, or are these lessons that you feel like can translate to basically any entrepreneur, any industry, anywhere?
Any entrepreneur, anytime, anywhere. It's like a movie, right?
Right. Yeah. In a world.
I love it. This was something that I'm currently always going through and struggling, because it's principle based, and I don't want to be super not be humble and say like this can work for anyone. I think the principles work regardless of state, regardless of business type, regardless of time. But the thing with the market, and this too, being marketing, we have to be very specific of who we're solving the problem to. And just through my experience and my exposure and the people that I work with, they're usually in the digital space. They're either selling digital services where the transfer of value is in bits, not in atoms, or they're selling experiences, or they're selling information, or they're selling some sort of combination of the both, experiences with information. But I mean, just this week I talked to a dude here in San Diego. He has one of his e-commerce product, but a physical product, and he sells it in Sprouts, and like he's trying to increase. And we were talking about his growth. Like, that's super exciting. Why? Because the principles still apply. But like, how many e-commerce companies have I personally worked with? Well, not too many, as much as I have with like digital services or information or experiences through the agencies. Yeah, we've done that, but it translates. But I think that it's all about customizing the journey based on the founder in alignment to their goals. Like, I have a limited scope. If you're trying to hit like 100 million or 200 million in sales, sure, I can come in, but I haven't done that. Right. So yeah. I'll go with what I've done, support what I've done, and obviously have opportunities to see if I can expand that reach.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I mean, I guess that's also important, of not trying to, be there to support in a way where you're like, well, I haven't been in that position, but here's some advice I can give you. But that's good to not, and not that that's imposter syndrome at all, but it's more or less like, you feel very comfortable representing the experiences that you have, as opposed to like trying to, be like, oh yeah, I'll help you to grow to a few billion,
Well, if we're blunt, because I was helping a team just last year, never done it before, and we hit like 50. But it has to be upfront, like, hey, we haven't done this before. You haven't done this before. Let's figure this out together. I think we can figure it out. Like, we're smart enough. But I think it also goes back to, like, if we look at medicine, the first rule of medicine: do no evil. So like, in your work, can you actually help? If yes, proceed. If not, then let everyone know.
That little flow chart. Yeah. Cool. So even though you're mainly advising about other people's organizations, what is it about driving like ad revenue that still remains important? Because I saw within the topics and stuff that you're very passionate about like the ads and digital advertising, and and that sort of like field. Are there things about digital advertising, not just the consulting on somebody's business, that you actually find exciting as well?
I think it's revenue in general, not where that revenue comes from. I mean, I grew up, I cut my teeth in direct response advertising for companies who are selling like good products to the marketplace. And I think it still works to this day, but there has to be a balance, right? But if we look at a higher level, like just looking into the 30,000-foot view, I work with bootstrap founders. I'm a bootstrap founder. I think I believe it's our responsibility to design business for scale. There's so many people that I talk to that want to live the lifestyle on their bootstrap and say, you know what, I just want to live a lifestyle business. I don't want to worry too much about it, but that becomes like the hamster wheel. And they come to the realization, and it's not like they're not mature, but it's a mature realization that, oh, if I actually want to grow and live the life I want to live, this sucker has to work on its own. Like this business has to be built for scale. And once you come to that realization, then it's like, okay, build for scale, design it based on your growth, be a market leader, and be able to consistently delight clients for a longer period of time. Like those are the real goals. And I think it's our responsibility. If you decide to go in business, it's a responsibility. So that's what excites me the most, to support the founder, the scrappy founder, the bootstrap founder who is literally creating value in the marketplace, but needs help to get to that next level. And usually we need revenue to do that. When it comes to ad revenue, again, I grew up in the ad space. I think it has its place. I think that shaming the idea of, especially in the B2B side, like shaming the idea of ad spend is like, well, it's like shaming a finger. Like it's part of the same hand. It's part of the same growth hand. Like, why is your pinky less important than your thumb or something? So like you need all of them to grow, but like, you don't need to necessarily, I don't know. There's like dogmas about it. I'm just, whatever works, let's align to it. And I have stories behind that if you want, but it's what's going to work for you and how are we going to reach that growth goal?
Yeah, that's super cool. I appreciate that. I did see that you went to SDSU, and funny enough, like I went to San Diego and I was actually looking at that school. And and it's interesting though, your degree actually aligns, which I know for a lot of people who are out there, working, that it doesn't, they went to school for something wildly different than they actually ended up in a career in. So did you know for a long time that you're kind of destined to, do something in entrepreneurship and consulting? Was this like, I started as a kid, thing that I was like, I'm going to have a business and I'm going to grow a business?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Or did you just kind of arrive at it, like got to school and are like, yeah, I'll do that?
I had someone on my podcast, and I think she mentioned like she loved that someone told her that she wasn't the lemonade entrepreneur, so she wasn't destined for entrepreneurship, but then she became very successful as an entrepreneur. Like, thank you for sharing that story, because everyone's like, oh, you have to start like at 2. I'm like, well, maybe not too early. So no, I actually didn't know. So this is where like the victor tells the stories. Like I knew I was going to be in business when I went to SDSU. Before then, so I actually wanted to be in animation. I did pretty well in high school on that. Had a teacher tell me like, hey, you should lean into graphic design, et cetera, et cetera. I was looking at art schools, talked to some people from my AOL accounts, if you still remember that. I think in DreamWorks, an art director. So I was going to do that. And then I found about entrepreneurship, I think in 2011 or 2012. Like I never knew it was a thing. And I was like, oh crap, there's kids down the street building businesses and they're helping people gain eyesight from that. And it was Solo Eyewear, the company that was an SDSU company. Cool. It's like, oh, that's interesting. So I changed my majors from psychology, and because I was going to community college, like let's do business. And then I went to SDSU to see their program. The school is great, the education is great, but there was a specific program in there called the Lavin program. It was like 2 credits. It was like peanuts. It was like what that was worth everything. I got exposure from real business owners. I got to sit in the rooms and have private conversations unrecorded. Back in the day, we couldn't record everything, with like behind the scenes war stories. So it was really good exposure early on. And I never knew I was going to be in consulting or in marketing. I actually didn't even know what marketing was in college.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. So it's just a wild journey, and I just let that lead me.
That's wild. I love that story. I'm very happy I asked that question though, because you never know how somebody gets to, where they're at. And, and yeah, you love, just like you mentioned, the lemonade entrepreneur that's like, oh yeah, at the age of 5, this person was just destined to like, be, a business owner. And, and I have, my own kind of winding path of how I got, to where I'm at. But it's interesting. That's great to hear that, like, yeah, it's that one course that kind of changed your life.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So since you're looking to inspire, other business owners and get them to think about their business, differently, people that are either inside or outside digital marketing, kind of influencers sphere, um, uh, you know, uh, actually, hold on. I'm gonna redo that question. I'm looking at it and trying to read it. Now I'm like, I gotta cut that out. Hold on. Uh, Oh, all right, cool. All right, now I was like, what was I trying to say here? All right, so since you're looking to inspire other business owners and get them to think about their business differently, who are the people either inside or outside the digital marketing influencer sphere that you either sort of admire or you think gives great advice?
I think the key thing around looking at who to listen to, especially when you're in a role where you have, I personally think that one of my special gifts is analogous, either metaphors or comparisons to something that may not be completely related, but is related to solve the problem. And I think to do that, you got to read a lot. I think books are the most underrated area to do that. So I eat books like I eat cookies, but since I've started working out, I stopped eating cookies. So I just eat books all the time. So in my opinion, I want to start first with outside of digital marketing, because I think if you just think in the same pool of thought as everyone else, like what makes you different? Like why should I listen to you when I can just listen to the other dude or the other gal? I personally love Ziegler's work, just like for myself. I also listen to a lot of health influencers. One of my favorite is Jeff Cavalier. He's pretty great. Alan Aragon as well. The classics, philosophy, heavy on philosophy, almost anything philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, Aquinas. In the digital marketing sphere, I like listening to the creatives, Blair Enns, David C. Baker. I really like Jonathan Stark's work. If we're looking more like a business strategy, I like Category Pirates. They run a great Substack. And then when it comes to like leadership and or execution strategy, I really appreciate Covey's work, especially 4 disciplines, or the 40X, 4 disciplines of execution. Like I know it by 40X, I don't know the whole title. So I look at all these different things and kind of culminate them, like what is the solution that we're going to get out of it? But you also have to be open to going down rabbit holes all the time.
Yeah. Just love, sort of taking in information and learning. And you mentioned the, philosophy aspect, and we don't need to get too heady on it, but I read a book that was so powerful called, Think Like a Roman Emperor. And it was all about Marcus Aurelius. And, anyway, it was just a wonderful book. And I was like, wow, the Stoic philosophy is just really just great information. And almost like life advice too, that you're like, oh, that's so cool.
It's always good to be able to pull the good out of everything, and then from you test it yourself. Like, is this good today? Because if it's proven or a principle, it'll be good anytime. And test it in real time, and then see what works, what doesn't work, and then take what works and move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, all right, cool. Well, one of the topics you like to cover is how to modernize your business model with AI. And and to say that, wow, AI is being talked about ad nauseum now is
it's kind of crazy. It's annoying.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I'm serious. And not to mention, people aren't really, in my opinion, talking about it in great detail. It's kind of like, oh, it's like, not tools or tactics. It's like, what is it going to be in the future? And you're like, oh, this is so pithy and and not worth it. But how are you kind of approaching it? Like, do you ever caution your clients on what advice to take from computer systems or where to draw the line? Because leveraging AI, it can be wonderful. But yeah, are you ever, sort of putting out a cautionary tale as well of like, do this, but not that?
I'm always a little bit conservative when it comes. It's weird. I'm very risk and really go for it and very crazy, like on my own stuff. But when I talk to clients, like we need to be very prudent with anything that we take moving forward, because mistakes will cost money and or like could be an issue. So, obviously there has to be the ethics boundary within it, but we're not going to dive into ethics or morality. But just do the right thing with it. Like data, whose data, where's that data being stored? I don't know about this whole, like, I cloned my voice in AI in the past. Like, I thought that was cool, but like, is that going to be used for evil? I don't know. Like, I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to think about what's the business outcome that I need. How are we doing this within the lines of legality, doing it correctly, ethically? But then most importantly, when I talk to clients, it's look at the privacy policies. So personally, I was building a co-pilot for some of the work that I was doing. It's an input output kind of thing. Like if I have all these different machines talking to each other, or different common protocols like input outputs, and they're able to spit out things in 3 minutes that would take me like 3 hours, that's great. And I was going to use a tool to do that. I looked at their privacy policy. I looked at the founder. I looked at where the company was incorporated. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. It didn't feel correct to do that. And like all these tools are going to sprout. I think at a time we had like 1,000 come out every week. And like there was even a time where back in the day, like 2 months ago, I don't know how long ago, you sign up for a tool and then I get an email a month later, oh, that tool is out of business. Like, what? That was fast.
Wow.
So
yeah.
I like to think about AI at a bigger level. Like, where does it play a role for your current business model? How does it allow you to compete on the invisible? If you're going to use it, make sure that you look at these key areas of ethics, privacy policy, and data. Like, this is not something that it's just a tool like a word processor. Like, people are taking your data and they're going to make whatever they're making smarter. One of my dudes so he runs a podcast production company. He's building some crazy stuff in the back end and he's using AI to do it. But one of the things that he's focusing on is if he has an actual agent, and an agent is the thing that you tell it to do something once, and then it tells itself what to do next for an output. He mentions to either run that on a virtual machine, because you never know like if that sucker is going to take over your computer. And I've had another friend in another industry who's in a very conservative industry have someone's computer get hacked because they were using some sort of AI and it sent an email to their clients. I think it was like, I don't know how many emails. It was like thousands. Let's just say it wasn't a very good email. That's a different story. So yes, it is a risk to the business and the business owner. But if you're using agents, it's best to do it on an isolated computer for one specific output, and then have one agent or one computer do one thing, finish that task, ship it to the other agent on another computer. So at any time you can shut off the computer and it's not going to touch your data. It's not going to touch anyone. Like, it has to be in isolation, at least at this point. But that's as far as I can get. It's above my thinking. I'd have to talk to other experts around it. But I think about it like, how can we leverage this for efficiency? How can we leverage this to support your team? How can we leverage this in your business model?
Yeah, awesome. And it's something that I feel like has so much possibility. But I'm glad there's some boundary and stuff that, as people like start to use it and issue it. It seriously, it's one of those things that has vast possibility though, which is neat. With your clone voice, were you ever gonna lay down a sick rap track or anything?
I don't know if I can do that. I did it just to read some articles, but who knows? Maybe now it's going to be a pseudo rapper.
Yeah. Do you think anybody's going to read audiobooks in the future? They'll just clone their voice and, put it over the text. And
I mean, that you can totally do that now. I decide just to read my audiobook because I'm like, hey, I'm going to share stories that aren't in the book while I read the audiobook and reflect in real time. I thought that was more valuable. But
oh, definitely. Absolutely.
I totally done 11 labs or something.
Yeah. We'll all be not needed at some point in the future.
Oh my God.
No, I'm kidding.
Actually, no, that's it. That's an interesting point. I mean, not to hit on the philosophy part, but AI right now. So right now, in this time in 2023, it takes data that exists and compiles something new. We as humans, though, have the ability to compile what is and what isn't in existence. So I think whatever work you're doing, focusing on that key thing, what can I compile that does not exist, the potential of to be? Because if you focus on that level of work, it doesn't matter what AI does until it actually becomes self-aware. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah, I know. Wow, that could be a whole nother podcast. Well, getting back to, I guess, what you do, I guess you spoke with, Jennifer Zick, recently. I watched, one of your podcasts, and you talked to her on your podcast about, noticing gaps in the marketplace. And she responded that, companies may begin downsizing and hiring more, teams, outside companies, because of agility. And so agility isn't a thing that you can necessarily teach per se. And you definitely know that, sometimes smaller companies just happen to be more nimble or agile. So how but it seems to dissipate as, like, companies grow and scale. But how do you balance that sort of activity of, like, kind of like trying to encourage people to stay nimble as they grow?
That's an interesting dichotomy. And so a few things here in real time. Like I've personally have seen organizations start super nimble and super lean and fast, and then get to the point where making a change is literally like a train track making a turn. It starts to make the turn. Okay, maybe 3 months later, oh, we made the turn. Like, that's insane to me. I've also seen small startups, like lean startups. Wouldn't even call it, a startup is something that finds product market fit. Let's just say it's a 3-year-old company and it's like found product market fit, but it's still growing or trying to fine tune that. Some people have the mentality of bureaucracy. Like, they just work that way. I'm like, this is insane to me. Like, we need to move fast. We need to take action like yesterday. Like, I come in and like, let's move like 100 miles an hour. Like, no, like, why not? So I don't know if you're right. You can't teach it. You have to have that fire within you, and you have to have that inclination to take action or imperfect action. That's something that I don't know, I feel like through experience or through getting punched in the face, like, I'm now leaning forward in that direction. But when it comes to, I think Jennifer's point was, mid-market companies and larger organizations are finding that they have bloat. It's just natural. Like, they just have too much bloat. Like, I was talking to a dude, the guy who was oddly enough, the head of, I think, either ethics or AI monetization at Facebook or at Meta. And like, his team was really small and nimble, but there was like bloat on bloat on bloat around like that company. Like, that's normal. Unfortunately, as you grow. So I think right now, outsourcing fractional teams, fractional deliverable, like outcome-based teams are super valuable, because they can come in, be like the SWAT team to execute what you need, and not be in for one team is the price of someone's salary. So you can get 5 people for the price of one. So I think that's what Jennifer was referring to. But I don't know, like, I haven't solved that problem of, if we're growing and we're profitable and we're at 40 people, 50 people, 200 people, how do we remain nimble and lean? I think it's about the founder being in touch with the organization, because you can also have a founder, because I think that there's a I'm going to say it out there. I think there's a virus thinking out there when it comes to, I'm just a visionary. All I have to do is lock myself in a room and have incredible thoughts and ideas, and then everyone else is going to execute it for me. Now, that could be true. But I think that you can have a death spiral of the delusional visionary, where you're just like thinking about all these grandiose ideas. Like, okay, cool, but here's where we're at today. Let's execute on today in alignment to those ideas, not just have this crazy idea and not do anything about it. So I think that it can lead founders to think that way. Because I was actually on a discovery call with a dude, and he was asking, what is an implementer? Like, who do I hire to bring in? Like, well, what got you to this point in your business? And we were trying to have him reach, his goal is to reach like 12 million a year. So still a small business, but we're trying to scale him up. He's like, well, what got you to this point? Like, well, I do this, I do that, I do all the execution. I'm like, okay, great. How do you do that at scale and build teams around you to do that, versus you just go in a corner, have grandiose ideas, and then hope the team executes them? So I think you have to have that balance where the founder has to have his hands on the dirt and feel and support the team, even at scale. Like, that's what I think the answer could be, but it's really hard to have like isolated case studies where we can test that theory in practice.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. No, that I feel like that's very interesting. It in general, and like you've mentioned, kind of like visionary, and we very much like subscribe to the EOS model, and try to implement some of those ideas and have like, yeah, the visionary and the implementer. But I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of like, yeah, if you feel like there is just the visionary and they've got amazing ideas, but there is no boots to the ground, there's not fostering the culture of kind of move fast, break stuff, or in order to kind of like get things out in the marketplace and actually materialize what all these great ideas might be, then it can just get totally lost. It's one thing that I was actually, just as you were kind of mentioning that story, I'm kind of wondering too, is like, are companies bringing in teams to stay nimble? They bring in smaller teams in order to like feel like, oh, hey, we can move fast on this, because they you were talking about bureaucracy, and gosh, yeah, and bloat, and gosh, you get these big companies that are moving so slow, because there's so much around them. And in order to bring in what you mentioned, like the SWAT team, is that the thing that helps them stay fresh, so I don't know.
It could change, yeah, it could change their mindset. I think you're right. It could show like, hey, we could run at that pace. Hey, we could actually do that. And again, this isn't to say that every mid-market or larger company like sucks. Like, of course not. Like, there's more.
Yeah.
Every decision is highly either regulated or highly important, or like people are looking for you to screw up so that they can see. Like, all these crazy things happen when you become very successful. Like, oh my gosh, like, so I think it could also, you can be a point of influence to that team to help them even execute at a higher level. So
cool. I'm in it, you're in it, whether it be delivering digital services or consulting with companies that that do, there's a lot of digital agencies out there. I mean, like a ton. And I mean, it seems like there's more and more every day. And
even since 2020, so many started in 2020.
yeah, I mean, the barrier to entry was so low. Obviously, all these people are, flocking to online during the pandemic, making sure that they have a digital presence because people weren't getting out of the house. So, I mean, like, yeah, there's a, a billion digital agencies. But do you think there's room for more, and why?
Oh, man. All right. So let me give you the crazy headline. I think there's room for more, but I also think that a lot are going to not make it. Let's look at the industry of bicycles for a second. So this was like 10 years ago, and it's still true today. Like, bicycles are in a mature industry, right? The problem to be solved is going from point A to point B without a car. The old age problem. Bicycles have been around for hundreds of years. So what's new? Why are bicycles still selling? Because they're changing the product. If the problem that they're solving is the same, then there's nothing they can do to innovate the problem, that they're going to innovate the solution. I see grown men riding like mock Harleys or mock, motorcycles, and their bicycles. Like, that's pretty cool. That guy's like zooming 30 miles an hour in the bike lane. Like, I want that. Right? And that thing's not cheap. Like, it's not like your old like $50, $70 bicycle you just buy. So I think, well, actually, no, I know. I was looking at Ibis World. It was a few years ago, that report, but it's still like the digital advertising, at least, or the agency world, is a mature industry. What does that mean? Consolidation. That means that the problem to be solved is an age-old problem. There's nothing new under the sun. Either A, you solve a unique problem for a unique set of individuals, or B, you innovate on the business model, you innovate on the solution, or you innovate on the deliverables. So I don't think there is room for another digital marketing agency that's a full house service that does everything under the sun, that supports you, and it can like jump 5 hoops and also deliver and pet your dog for you. I don't think there's room for that anymore. I think those are going to be going away pretty quickly. Like, if you look up on LinkedIn and I look up digital agency, there's a ton of people, but I look at the websites, they're all like copy and paste websites, even though they're not. It's the same wording, same thing. We'll do all these things. Like, what's the difference? I think there is room, though, for agencies that produce a specific outcome. And I want to lean into that. So when it comes to the niching down, like being a very specific something for someone, there is still room for that because running an agency is hard. Like it's super hard. It's not easy. Like it's fun. It's yeah, but I think I aged like 3 times faster running an agency and helping agencies grow, especially like those runs. So it's not easy at all. So just doing this simple idea well over time, you will be successful. Like you are, like I see general agencies still be successful today because they just follow, we're solving one specific problem and we're going to run it well over the next 5-10 years. You can still be really successful doing that. But I think right now, in terms of new competition or new agencies, you have to be very bespoke in your solution. Doesn't mean that you have to make the product over and over again every single time, but solve a specific problem or compete on the business model. On the solving a specific problem, one of my dudes runs an agency and he's like, we're an execution agency. And I think that's really fascinating. He differentiates by saying, we're not going to do strategy and give you this grandiose thing. We're going to come in and get results. Okay, cool. I like that. He's been running business, I think, for 20 years. He's going to continue to be successful for the next 20, 30 years. On the flip side, if you're innovating on the business model or on the deliverables, we need to look at, well, what changes? What is the unique factor here? One of my dudes just recently banded up with other 2 guys here in San Diego, and instead of selling services, they're selling access. They're selling access to their brain and the deliverables, so you subscribe to them. And they, I wouldn't say sold out, they hit their max capacity within a week of launching. Obviously, they had build up, they had an audience, they had support, but there's demand for that. There's demand for access. So that's changing. The problem is I need growth. I need a web. I need whatever. Cool. That's an age-old problem. Okay, we'll give you access. That's different. Or we'll be a subscription, or we'll be a SaaS. Like, how are you changing up the way that you deliver? And I think that's the balance that you have to find. And anything that's generic is just going to be kicked out.
Cool. Great. Sage advice. All right. Well, the last one I have for you here is kidding, not kidding. You've got a great Zen way of approaching your questions and, and how you kind of relay information a podcast. Have you ever considered, filling in on the Calm app for a meditation session?
Oh my gosh. I've never considered it. If the offer is there, maybe. Why not?
Maybe this is the chance. Yeah, I'll. Yeah, we'll make that shout out right now. But no, really, honestly, I appreciate a lot of the things that I saw in terms of podcasts. It's great that you have 2 books, which you've written. And seriously, if there's anything else that you want to mention about those, definitely feel free. But it's great having you on.
I appreciate it, man. I think one of the things that I always like to leave if I'm doing amazing pods like this or speaking from stage or in private rooms with teams is design the journey because the journey matters. The journey determines your destination. I think we forget that as owners, as entrepreneurs. We're super gung-ho, like, here's the destination. I'm going to go through the suck and I'm going to suck it up and it's going to be horrible, but I'm going to get to that end outcome. But that suck is like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So why don't you just design it to enjoy it, to be fruitful in all areas of your life? So I'll leave you with that. And everyone can contact me or find me on the website, dogoodwork.io.
Boom. Mic drop. That was, but you can't drop that mic. It's on scale. It's fine. But no, that's great. I really appreciate it. Seriously. Thank you so much for being on.
Brent, this was fun. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I'm your host, Brent Feldman. This has been another episode of Mix and Matchbox. We'll be back soon with more content. Thanks.